Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for checking out my video. This is your host, ID Jester, and I am proud to present to you Tigers on the Hunt. This is a World War II infantry combat system that is loosely based upon the old ASL rules. It is being developed by SiliconSoft Systems Incorporated, and of course, the publisher of this is Matrix Games. Of course, you can find all the information about this game on the Matrix Game website. What I am going to be doing for you guys is I am going to be playing through a scenario and recording it. And I'm going to be giving you some idea of how the game plays, going over some of the basics, and also many strategies, battlefield tactics, things you want to understand to learn how to play so you can jump in once Tigers on the Hunt is full released and get playing right away. So hopefully you enjoy this series, and let's get started here. So as you can see, the game comes with a bunch of different scenarios here. Actually, there is 25 real scenarios and a couple, 4 training scenarios here. So quite a nice mix of different scenarios. Of course, you can just pick on any one of them and you're going to read the different text that talks about the different scenario. What I decided to do for you guys here is I'm actually just going to start with scenario number 1, because I plan on doing quite a few videos for you guys and uploading these so you guys can check out all these different videos before the game releases, and so when it does release you have a pretty good idea of how the game plays, what your different units can do, and kind of have a general understanding of the battlefield tactics that are going to make or break your scenario. So with scenario number 1 is kind of a nice little scenario. We get to play around with some different kind of units. We have a couple AFVs and some squads, so I don't want to make it too complex the first scenario in for you guys. And we're going to go a little bit slow the first couple turns, just so everybody kind of understands the basics behind the system and what you can do. And then probably by turn 4, 5, 6, 7, we'll be able to fly through those turns pretty quickly and hopefully come out of here with a nice victory. So you can see here, once we click on the scenario, we have a real nice overview of the scenario. Talks about what had actually happened. And this is what I really like, and I think it's a great addition to the game, that you can see here the AI player units may vary, so you're never sure exactly what you're going to be up against, and that is awesome, because that just lets you play this scenario many different times, because you're never sure what you're up against, and every time you do, it's going to be a little bit different. In this case, you can see the Germans are going to have mostly squads and some AFVs, and the Russians are going to have some squads, some light machine guns, and some medium machine guns. It's a city. It's 2 maps. A city. It's only 7 game turns, so we should be able to get through it, pretty quickly. Maybe just a couple videos. And of course, the side with the most victory points at the end is the winner, and of course, the scenario designer. So let's go ahead and start this game up. And of course, it's going to take us to the scenario configuration screen here, and this is pretty self-explanatory. You're just going to choose which side is the computer, and of course which side is the human. And you can see in this case the computer player is going to basically be in a hold pattern, and as the human player we're going to be advancing or doing the attacking. And it also mentions to you which side is going to set up first and which side is going to move first. So in this case, the Russians are going to set up first and the Germans are going to move first. There is some difficulty, different levels of difficulty in the game, and I'll kind of just go over those pretty easy with you. And basically the difference between these is the command and control system, whether or not you're using it or not. So if you're on easy, you do not have to, your units don't have to roll for command and control, while the computer does. So you have an advantage because some of his units won't be activated that turn, and your units always will be activated. If you play on normal difficulty, both you and the computer do not use the command and control system, so both sides will have all their units all the time. If you play on hard, both sides, both you and the computer, will roll for your command and control each turn. So it's still fair, but it'll be slightly harder because you won't have control of some of your units, while he will also not have control of some of his units. And then of course you can play on very hard, and in very hard you will roll for command and control for your units, but the computer does not, so they will always be in control. So what I think I'm going to do is just play on normal, so you guys get to see all the units every time for both sides. So that's what normal is. And we can enable Fog of War, we can disable it, so we're going to keep it enabled. So obviously Fog of War is whether or not you can see the enemy units. And then the path quality here, I'm going to leave that on high. This just determines how much computer strength is going to go into determining AI pathing. So the higher, the better the enemy is going to be able to move his units around. And a couple other grayed out rules here, because the Russians don't have any AFVs. You can, if they did have a AFV in this scenario, you could check back. You could check this, and of course, random visibility in the campaign game. Of course, we're not playing a campaign game, so that's not enabled either. So we're going to go ahead and say OK. And you notice we are starting up here. Oh my gosh, this is great. Turn one. Very excited. Very excited to bring this to you guys. So you can see the map here. Beautiful details in the map. Really enjoying that very much. And we're just kind of scrolling up and down. So to get around the map, obviously scroll left, scroll right, up or down to get to your different units. You see our German units over here on the right-hand side of the map. And you can see that we have the victory hexes already on the map. You can see where those are. There is a button for that actually, and I'm just trying to remember which one of these buttons it is. Apologize. I'm just still learning where the different buttons are, but well, of course you can go to the display, okay, and you can click on scenario objectives that way, and you can turn them on or off very easily and quickly. I'm sure there's a button here that I'm missing. Oh, right there, of course, now that I see it. Most everything that's in these menus here you can find on the little taskbar here at the top, so you can turn on and off those objectives. So again, I'm not going to be really doing tutorial video. This isn't really a tutorial video on how to play. This is more of a tutorial video on battlefield tactics and how to use your different units and what they can do, and just kind of understanding the mechanics behind the system. And of course, look for these other tutorial videos to come out by the developer, so he will give you some more information on actually how to different tutorials on how to use the different units. So since we are looking at the battlefield tactics, one of the things we want to do is look at the status, and we want to look at the scenario attributes. And of course, this is going to give you all the information about what we're looking at so far: the name of the scenario, how long it is, whether it is during the day or during the night, the difficulty, which side sets up first, which side moves first, whether or not there's grain, orchards are in seasons, fog of war, all that stuff, and of course the scenario date here down at the bottom. So you probably just want to review this one more time before you actually start the scenario. There's nothing worse than getting halfway through scenario and going, what do you mean grains in season? I didn't know that. So just double check this before you move on. Just a quick glance, just to make sure you understand what you're trying to do. So since we're talking about what we need to do, obviously the most important thing is for us to look at what we need to do by the scenario outcome. So this screen here, of course we got this from the status. It shows us that there are 3 different victory point locations, the hexes they are located on, and which side currently owns them. You can look at this anytime you want. And of course it tells you the value of them. So you can see we have 3 victory point locations. There are 4 total points worth of locations. One is worth 2 and the other 2 are worth 1 point each. And you can see down here at the bottom, for a major victory you need to hold all 4 of those. A minor victory if you hold 3, a draw if both sides hold 2, a minor defeat if you only hold 1, and a major defeat if you hold 0 or less. Some of the times you might have a scenario in which you would get victory points for either exiting units or for killing enemy units. You can see in this case everything is at 0, so this scenario is set up. It doesn't matter how many units you lose, it doesn't matter how many enemy units you kill. All that matters is for us to get these victory point locations. So the most important one is obviously in hex 922, which is worth as many points as the other two combined. So let's find out which one that is. And I just happen to know it's this one down here in the bottom. So this one's worth 2, this one's worth 1, and this one's worth 1. So if we just take this one and we don't capture these 2 hexes, it's going to be a draw. So what we're going to try and do, battlefield tactics wise, is we're going to try and come down here, push to the south end pretty hard, and take this location and then move our way up. And maybe sneak out that 3rd point if we can. What I'm thinking about doing is taking these troops over here in the top corner and kind of bringing them, looping them around kind of in an arc around this way. So if the defenders kind of mass down here to protect, we can always swing around, maybe come and grab this point right at the last couple turns and grab it, and then hopefully overwhelm our enemies down here in the south and grab this 2-point location. And then with this one up here, that would give us 3 points. That's at least a minor victory. And then of course we'll try and squeeze them in our pincer move here and try and get that 4th point if we can. So what do we have to for units wise? So you can kind of see our units over here on the right hand side, but there's actually a really good display that you can look at. If you click on the wrong button, it's this one down here, the order of battle. Sorry about that. Again, I'm just getting used to the different buttons here, but the order of the battle. And this is basically just going to bring up and show you on turn 1 what all your units are. And of course, if you have reinforcements coming in turn 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, they would be listed there. So you can see we're not getting any reinforcements. Everything starts here in the game. Looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 squads, 3 leaders, and 2 tanks. The Stug 3Gs have an armament of 75 millimeters. So that's the basic information about them. Of course, so you can look at the different leaders here and the different squads here. Of course, there'll probably be a tutorial video on the different quality of the different units coming out by the developer, but you can see all of our squads are first line. We have some leaders here, just so you know. The lower the letter, the better the quality of the leaders. So they go from A to D. So you can see we have a B leader here, which is pretty darn good, and then we got a couple C leaders here. So you know, they're not quite as good as the B, but the C's are better than the D's, obviously. So we don't have any really low D's, but we got a couple C's, and of course who's our sergeants, and of course we have a B, which is a lieutenant there. So we have 3 leaders, and leaders in this game basically are going to help you with rallying your units. They're going to help you with extra movement when you move with your leaders, and then of course they can help you with your fire controls, creating fire groups, and not cowering your units when you go to attack. So battlefield tactics wise, we only have 7 turns. We have to take these objectives. Alright, so right now obviously we don't know where the enemies are. They could be all in these buildings here, or they could be just sitting back here. We have no idea because we have fog of war on, which is great. So it keeps you in suspense and not sure where exactly the best options are going to be. So we're going to have to just come up with the plan of action and then kind of just you know, alter it on the fly, as they like to say. So it looks like we got a leader up here and a couple squads. You can always right click in a hex and that'll show you what units are in the hex. So you can see we have a leader, oops, little bug there, come on, there we go, and a couple first lines. I should mention again that this game is not full released yet, so everything you see can and may be changed before the first release. Okay, this is still beta, so you know, you might see some things that still need fixed up and finishing, but that's fine. If we look at our units here, the stars represent the morale of the units and the quality of the leaders, and the more stars, the better they are. So if you see any units that don't have stars, like this one down here, you can see that this leader here, because he has a star, has got a little bit better quality than this unit down here that doesn't have a star. So same thing with your first line and your second line and your different units. Obviously we have 2 stars in both of these guys. Let's see if we can find yep, these guys are all yep, these are all the same. Okay, so it looks like all of our first line are probably all from the same platoon, so they're all equal in quality, and they seem to have a pretty good morale. So that's going to help us recover in case we are attacked. So we have 2 leaders down here to the south. We have 1 leader up here to the north. So what I'm thinking about doing, like I mentioned, is kind of taking these units here and just kind of circling around. And then what I'm hoping to do here on the south is kind of just push heavy down here to the south, and then kind of grabbing this point and making our way north as feasible. We don't want to just send our tank just down the road, barrel down the road, without having some infantry covering it, because we'd like to know if there's actually something in these hexes. So what we're going to do here is let's get started. So there is so right now we're in the pre-game setup segment. Okay, so that's the first thing is, so before the game actually starts, you can move your units around. It looks like these units are pretty stationary in these locations, but if you had different locations to set up your units, of course you can do that to move them around to your liking. But in this case, I like our setup. I'm just going to go ahead and click this button, and the pregame setup segment is going to just go ahead and go away. So in this game, each turn is represented by seven different segments, and what you're going to do is you're going to play as the attacker. In this scenario, we are the attacker. So since we get to move first, we're the attacker in the first half of the turn, and then in the second half of the turn, we're the defender. And then when both sides are the attacker, the turn ends, and you go on to turn number 2. So you'll see that as we go through here. So the first segment is the administrative segment, and that's basically where your units are going to roll to see whether they're in command or not, and you can pick up weapons that might be on the ground, and other miscellaneous things that can happen. And so we're just going to process this through since it's the first turn. You see all of our units were able to roll and make it because of us choosing a nice normal setting. We're always going to be in command. The enemies are always going to be in command. So we'll have access to all of our units. And so the first segment that starts the round here after the administrative segment is the fire segments. So basically, I'm not going to go too in depth in the different segments here. Again, there'll probably be some tutorial videos out there, but basically your units can fire or they can move, and then once they finish moving, they can fire, but they're only going to be firing at half firepower. So in this case, we don't really have anybody to fire at, so we don't need to fire anybody in the fire segment. Now once we get involved with the enemy in a couple turns here, we might actually use some of our units to fire. So just keep in mind that first segment here is fire. If you fire, then you can't move. If you do choose to move, though, when you fire, you're only going to be firing at half firepower. So there's a lot of really things to think about. So we're just going to bypass the fire segment here. And after the fire segment is the movement segment. Now, remember, we are the attackers in the first part of this turn. So the defenders are going to be able to attack us while we move if we go into range and line of sight of them. And they're going to get a bonus on that. So we don't really want to take too many attacks if we can avoid it. So, but we also have to take into consideration we only have 7 turns. We have 7 turns to get all these objectives. You know, it's going to take us quite a few turns just to walk over there, and even if there wasn't enemies in the way. So we can't just lollygag. So in our movement segment here, we're going to take a little bit of a chance here. What we're going to do is, there are 3 different kinds of movement. There's regular movement, there's assault movement, and there's double time. So in regular movement, you're going to get a certain amount of movement points that you can spend to enter into the different hexes. If you go into assault move, you basically can only move into an adjacent hex, and if you go into double time, you get some extra movement points to spend. If you use your squads with your leaders and they move together, you also get some little bit extra bonus points to your movement. You'll notice the counters don't actually have any numbers on them, and I think the developer decided to do that on purpose because he really wants you to focus not so much on the numbers, but he wants you to really focus on the battlefield tactics and understanding the system, and not really worrying about, am I getting a +1, a +2, a -1, or -2, because in the long run that's really not what makes the game interesting and fun. What makes the game really interesting and fun is the whole interaction of the units and the firing and the defensive firing and maneuvering and outmaneuvering and outthinking your opponent is really the key and the fun of what's going on here. So because we're so far back, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of a risk, and I'm going to go to double time, and I'm going to use a leader stack, and we're going to try and run this bad boy up as far as we possibly can. And hopefully we won't run into any enemies along the way. But hopefully he'll give us a nice view of where the enemies might be, and then we'll know when it comes time to move our tank up. We'll have a better idea of where we should position our tank. So let's go ahead and double time some units up there with the leader, and what we're going to do is to click on the hex, and then we're going to click on a unit, and then you're going to hold your control key down, and every time, as long as you hold your control key down, as long as you click on a unit, you can highlight it or deselect it. So you can see I'm just holding my control key down. I can highlight them, deselect them. So in this case, I just want all of them highlighted, so I'm just going to highlight all of them. That means all of them are going to move together, and you're going to see white hexes around your units, and we're just going to right click into them, and depending on the what is in the terrain is going to cost us some movement points. And you can see up here in the top right hand corner, when I hover over this, you can see that that is going to be a stone building, and this is just going to be a road move. So obviously if you're moving into buildings or through orchards or through different hindrances and rubble and stuff, it's going to take more movement points, makes sense, than if you're just traveling down a clear path or down a road. So what we're going to do is we're going to move these guys into that hex, and we're going to move them again and again and again and again, and you can see now that we have some white hexes and we have a red hex. So that means anytime you see a red hex, that would be the last hex that you could move if you're going to move into that hex. White hex means that you possibly could move past that hex. And so what we're going to do is, and I say possibly because if I move to say this hex right here, and I'm surrounded by nothing but buildings, I might be able to move into that hex, but I might not have enough movement points to move into the buildings. You might see that later on, so that's something to keep in mind. But we're gonna keep pressing up. We're gonna press up again, and you can see now we can go into this hex, we can go into this hex, we can go into this hex. We can't quite make it in the buildings. So you think, oh man, we were so close, so close. But wait. We have another phase later on in the turn here it's called the advanced phase. It's going to allow us to move one additional space for all of our infantry units. So we are going to be able to get this guy, but it's going to take us later in the turn before we can do that. Alright, so we didn't see anything along the way. So what are we going to do here? We're going to bring this guy right here. We're going to keep it on double time, and we're going to... Oops, we have to select them, of course, and we're going to move them together. You don't have to necessarily move them together, but we are in this case. And so in this case, I have to think about what I want to do. I can move this guy into this hex here, and I know later on in the turn I'm going to be able to move him one more hex. So the question is, do I want to move him here and then move him one more hex, or is it better for me to keep him out of harm's way and hide him behind buildings? In this case, I think because we haven't seen any units yet, we're going to go ahead and risk it and bring him up just one more hex. And then when the advanced phase comes, which we'll see in just a minute here, I'll show you how all that's going to work out. Same thing with these guys here. We're going to click on the hex. We're going to click on the different units, holding our control key down. And we're still double timing. So there is an advantage with the double time and a disadvantage with the double time. The advantage is you get more movement points during that turn, but your units become tired, and the next turn they cannot double time. So it's a good way really to get your units kind of, especially on the first turn, to get them kind of moving and get them get some ground covered. I guess we're going to go here and there. There we go. Alright, beautiful. So far, so good, right? We haven't been shot. Our units aren't dead yet. Everything is hunky-dory. Alright, so it's time to bring up the old armored fighting vehicle. So we have a Stug 3G in this scenario. With the Stug, it has a fixed turret. So you can see over here we have a covering arc. Our turret is always going to line up with our covering arc, which is shown by this little arrow in the corner. If we had a turreted vehicle, you would see a TA with some arrows under here, where we could rotate the turret separate from the actual body of the tank. But in this case, because it's a fixed turret, we only have the covering arc. So whichever way our tank is facing, that's the way our main armament will get to shoot. If you're not sure, there's a cool little button up here right underneath tools. It's this little looks like a little triangle, and that'll show you your covering arc. So you can see that we're covering arc is going to face here, so it shows you all the yellow dots, and that is a great thing, so you can kind of get an idea of what you're looking at, where you can attack, and make sure you get into good positions here. So I'm just going to turn that off for right now, and I'm thinking I'm going to bring the tank down in here because we have a nice line of sight down out this way. There's this little building here that's going to block us this way, so I might actually bring it here, but what we're going to do is bring it to here and see what we can see first. So the first thing we need to do obviously is click on the hex. You can see it's highlighted in yellow. We're going to click on the tank, and then we're going to start it up. So it can't do anything with it until it is started. So we're going to go ahead and start it. Hexes that it the two forward hexes that it can go into. So we're going to right click. Aha! Some more information. So it looks like we have some Russians hiding in this ruin, some over here. So what I think I'm going to do, I can bring the tank this way, or I can continue down the road. What we're going to do here is, of course, that's going to be right in our covering arc. So that's going to be a good way to whittle these units down with our tank when we move up our units here. So at this point, I'm going to actually stop the vehicle. Vehicle moves, fires, stop. So we're going to go ahead and move it up and stop. We got some nice line of sight on some of the enemy units, so now we get a little bit better idea of what we're up against. That's always a good thing. Fortunately, it doesn't look like the enemy has any too dangerous items that's going to really threaten our Stug there. So that's going to be fortunate for us. Alright, so now we have to worry about our northern flank here. And again, what I think I'm going to do is try and sneak between these buildings, come around, use this building for cover, maybe use this building for cover, come in here, and maybe try to sneak in this way. So again, I'm going to leave it on double time. Again, I'm going to know next turn I'm not going to be able to run any of my units, which is fine. We're going to click on the hex, and then of course we're going to click on all the units. We're going to move there, 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 there. And see, if I go here, we might have to start worrying about line of sight from enemies here. I think this guy will be blocked because of this building. It does have a line of sight editor or a checker in the game, if you're unsure. See, and this is what I love about these tactical World War II games like this. It's like every time you move, every time you fire, every time you route, where you go, where you move your units, every little step you make can be great or it can be terrible. Oh, jeez, and that was terrible. So, see that? Look at that. Line of sight between that, right between, I mean, like, wow. You wouldn't even think there is line of sight there. But obviously the game, it does think through line of sight. And you can always see what happened down here in the bottom. It looks like both of our squads have become broken. And the medium machine gun did not keep his rate of fire. So that is for the Russians there. So looks like the Russians have their own defenses here. It looks like up here again, looks like they're in a building there, so that's going to be hard to get rid of these guys. But now that we've been broken, that's rather unfortunate for us, because now these guys are going to be out of action for a little while, and we'll see that when we start looking at. I couldn't believe there was line of sight right between. I mean, it's like a perfect shot. They just saw us right between these two buildings and took a shot at us. And unfortunately for us, we've become broken. Now this is where the defenders have a great advantage. When we're in our movement segment and they catch us off guard, they get some bonuses against us. I'm not going to get too in depth, but they get some bonuses. And those bonuses can really end up really hurting us. And obviously, as you can see, we have 2 broken units as a result for that. That's rather unfortunate. Alright, so we have these units here. We're again going to be double timing them. And I'm going to leave them right there. Now you can see I can move them here, and I can move them here, but I don't have enough movement points to move them into the building. But remember, like I said earlier, the system set up that towards the end of the turn, there's the advanced phase. And in the advanced phase, you can move them into an adjacent hex for free. It doesn't cost any movement points. So we'll be able to move them into that hex during the advanced phase. I could bring them over here. No, I think I'll leave them right there and bring them up into this building. And then we'll try and shoot them across the gap sooner or later. Alright, so that leaves us with one left, and that's our armored vehicle. And I'm thinking about bringing him, actually I was going to bring him down here, but I think I'm going to actually support our northern flank, especially since these guys are broken, with a nice armored fighting vehicle, our Stug. And so of course we're going to highlight it, we're going to click on our tank, and we're going to click the start button. To go into, or we can turn our front over this way. I think what I'm going to do is there's a nice little button here which I actually put markers on there, and you can see that what it'll do is the units that move will turn all gray, so you know that they are out of movement points here. Can't do any more movement. And I do like to use that. Alright, so that is our movement phase. You notice all of our guys have moved. And so now what we're going to do is end this movement phase and move on to the next phase. So the next phase is the defensive fire segment. So not only when I'm moving do the enemies get to shoot me, but they can also shoot me in the advance or in the defensive fire phase if they have line of sight and they haven't already previously shot at me. So sometimes you might want to hold your fire because you don't want to shoot at a single target. You're waiting for maybe a better or juicier target, and then you have to wait to the defensive fire phase. So there's advantages in both, and basically the player that uses those phases, the movement phase, the defensive fire phase, and the advancing fire phase, is kind of the meat of a turn. And those players that use their units to the best of their abilities during those phases usually end up winning the game. But you notice the defensive fire phase has just skipped over it because none of our units are in line of sight, or they can't attack us and damage us. Obviously, this guy has line of sight, but he can't actually damage us. So he decided not to shoot at us, which is smart. Now, of course, as soon as the defensive fire phase is over, we go right into the advancing fire segment. So again, I mentioned this earlier. So once our units moved, those units that move can now shoot, but they're only going to be shooting at half firepower. So unfortunately, units that are broken can't do anything. You notice our units here, if we would have had those guys still alive, we would have been able to shoot at them, but these guys are broken, so that's not going to happen. These guys don't have line of sight to anybody. I do have on the line of sight, which happens to be this button right here. So if I click on a unit and I have the line of sight on, okay, all the units that are in its line of sight will highlight. So you can see this unit, and this unit are in our line of sight for this. But if I click on, say, these units back here, you can see that nothing highlights, which means there is no line of sight from these units, no line of sight from these units. So pretty much the only one that we can advance fire with is this vehicle right here. And of course we have a choice of this unit, or this unit. Because we already moved, we're going to be at a penalty to shooting, which is fine, but we're going to go ahead and take the shot anyways. It's kind of a risk because your armament can break, so you have a slight chance of that happening. So you have to rate, kind of weigh the risk reward in this situation. Is it worth trying to take this out? You have a low chance of doing any damage to it right now because we spent a lot of movement. Or is it worth risking trying to do that and breaking your main armament on this gun? In this case, it is to me, because this guy is right here by the 2-point victory point location. Oh, we got more units down here. I guess I should scroll the map down so we can see. We actually have units down here. They are out of our firing arc, though, so we're not going to be able to target these guys right now anyways. What's in this hex? Looks like a couple first line units and a leader, a C leader with no stars. Okay. Alright, but I'm really worried about this machine gun here. Look at that. Nice light machine gun and first line units. So taking this guy out, getting our units over there and taking that victory point obviously is our main objective right now. So we're going to take a shot at it. So again, highlighting the hex, highlighting the unit, and then right clicking. Once you do that, with tanks especially, you're going to get this little menu here, and it's going to ask you, do you want to use your MA, which is your main armament, your bow, your coaxial, or your anti-air machine gun? You can only use your anti-air machine gun if you are unbuttoned. And in this case, the Stug 3G does not have a bow or coaxial machine gun, so those are not available. So the only thing we can really shoot is with our main armament, so we're going to choose that. Once we choose that, it's going to ask us, okay, what do you want to shoot at? Do you want to shoot at infantry? Do you want to shoot at an armored AFV, smoke, or white phosphorus? Depending on if there was a tank in this location, that might be highlighted as well. So you can see the only thing we can shoot at this point is the infantry, so that's what we're going to do. Come on, give us a good result, please. Alright, so we shot, and our Stug 3G does not keep its rate of fire. So unfortunately for us, he's not going to be able to do anything else for us this turn, and all of our other units don't have line of sight, so we're just going to end this phase by hitting the button. Now comes the route segment. This is a very important segment in the game. Whoever is the attacker is going to route first, and that is going to come into play quite a few times. You will not believe how many times it comes into play. In this case, we have some units up here that needs to route because they are broken, and they're in line of sight of an enemy. And what you want to do is route them away from the enemy so they can't be shot at, and hopefully they're going to recover. And of course, if they're with a leader, they're going to get a bonus on the recovery. And if they're in a building or rubble, and I believe forest hexes, I believe I'll give you a bonus to your I have to double check the rules again. This game is loosely based upon the ASL system. There are quite a bit of differences, so I can't say for certainty on that without looking at the rule book. So we're just gonna go without at this point. Anyways, you can see we have a leader that's tired, we have a broken, and we have a broken. Unfortunately, our leader can't go with our broken guys. That's rather unfortunate. I wish they would have all broken, actually. And I don't think if I select all three, it will. Maybe it will let me. Let's see. So if I go to move back here. Oh, actually, I can move the leader with them, which is great. All right, so now we moved there. And I would like to move them, actually, one more space backwards. It's not going to let me. Okay. So we're trying to get out of their line of sight so they can't shoot us, and unfortunately, what we should have done was maybe move up here and then over there. Bad decision. Of course, every time you make a bad decision, that just makes your player that much stronger, so you'll have to think about these things. Alright, so that's the only people that are broken. Obviously, we shot at the enemy, didn't break any of their units. You don't necessarily have to break. You don't necessarily have to route. It just depends on whether or not you have enemy units in line of sight, as long as they're not covering any hindrance. And you'll see more of that as we play some more turns here. So let's go ahead and finish the route segment. Of course, the Russian player does his. And now we're on the advanced segment, like we talked about throughout this first turn here. So that gives us the opportunity for any unit that's not broken to actually move into an adjacent space. And you can see you can only move one and only one space. So we're going to move these guys right up there. We're going to take these guys right here. And of course, I'm just holding the control key down, moving them up. This guy here, moving them up. And then these guys here, we're going to move them up behind there as well. And these guys were broken. And of course, you don't get to do that with any kind of ordnance or AFVs or anything like that. It's just infantry units. Alright, and that is basically going to be the end of... Oh, no, I'm sorry, there's the close combat phase. So if I was actually advanced into an enemy hex, and we would have a close combat, but obviously we're not close enough to do that. And now we should be done with that. So basically we're done with half a turn. What happens is now we just work through those same phases as the Russian player is the attacker, and now I am the defender. So I will get to fire during their movement phase or during my defensive fire phase. and that is just as important, being the defender, as the attacker. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and put a cut in this video and come back for episode number 2, where we get to watch what the Russians do during the first turn here. So thanks so much for watching. We'll see you guys in the next episode.